Welcome to Experimental, the science show where men play with robots, robots play with cows, and insects fly aeroplanes. Coming up, we separate this man's head from his shoulders and find out how a high-tech pair of trainers could force this kid off computer games. But first, World Championship football. Freiburg Football Stadium in Germany. For one night only, robots are attempting to take over the world's favourite game, and we're hunting the man responsible for this atrocity. Professor Bernhard Nabel is an expert in artificial intelligence, and his robot is the first ever developed to take on a human at football and win.
My specialty is AI and robotics, and I'm trying to build robots that can play soccer and then are able to beat the human world champions.
A robot that can beat Brazil? What on earth does Bernhard's creation look like? Well, something like this, actually. And the contest isn't taking place in a stadium. It's in a pub around the corner. Bernhard's robot plays table football and is rather good at it. So good that later tonight it's going to be taking on world champion Thierry Müller. Bernhard is Professor of Artificial Intelligence and Robotics at the University of Freiburg. He made his name building robots that play football against robots. And they've won the Robo World Cup 3 times. But Bernhard's dream is that one day his World Cup winning robot team could take on a human team and kill them. But with strikers like this, he's got a long way to go, which is why he's gone back to basics.
Well, you switch to a game that is a bit simpler, and a bit simpler is this game here, which is table soccer, where you have a lot of control, but still there's all this uncertainty you have, and, well, now we built such a system.
Bernhard's creation is a robotic wonder. It features 8 powerful motors that slide and twist the 4 playing rods. An infrared camera updates the position of the ball 50 times a second. And against a random sample of people, it wins 75% of the time. Which makes Bernhard's machine the first in history that can beat humans at a physical game.
That was a 3rd goal against me. Annoying.
It's so popular that a commercial version has now been made. The camera is now underneath, and it even pays for itself. It's great at beating PhD students, but we wanted to know how it would cope against a real challenge. So we set up a showdown against 8-time German and 1-time world champion Thierry Müller. No wonder Bernhard's looking nervous. So a bright start by these 2 players in this first of 6 goals match. The robot, of course, playing in its usual home colours of blue. Both teams trying not to take any chances here. Oh, great goal from midfield, 1-0 to the robot. But they're off again, nice control from Thierry there. Oh, great reply. Lovely tour, caught the defence napping there. Oh, terrible slip up by the goalie there. He won't want to see that one again. 3-1. And the robot really is in charge. Can Thierry make it back from here? 3-2. And another. Thierry's really turning on the style. 5-3. Just one more needed for victory. And it's there. The human race wins again. And luckily, like any good manager, Bernhard has the excuses ready.
Was not in the best form, it has problems, and 6-3 is actually, I think, a very good result.
But what about our world champion? Conceding 3 goals against a robot, you must be sick as a parrot, Thierry.
A little bit, but I win.
But maybe not for long.
We are working on making the machine much better, and well, one way to do that is to use imitation learning techniques so that we watch what the human does and then learn from it and improve the style of playing.
So, Thierry, however good you think you are, soon the computer will be watching and learning from your every move. But, for the time being at least, humans rule. In a moment, experimental meets the insects, destined to take over in the cockpit. But first, let's go to the test department for a spot of hanging and drowning. The human head, essential feature or just somewhere to keep your hat? It's clear that our heads are crammed full of useful stuff, but just how much does a human head actually weigh, and how on earth do you work it out? On the face of it, it's a simple task, but when you try it for real, you soon come up against some serious problems. There are, of course, some rather drastic solutions to the problem, but decapitating scientists for entertainment is a bit of a no-no these days, at least on this channel. But fear not, there is a slightly safer way to isolate the head from the body. The test department's Head Separator 3000 system. By dangling our demonstrator upside down, the head hangs freely. Job done. But what about the weight? Well, that's what the bucket's for. That's right, we're going to dunk him. The water that spills over the edge will be directly proportional to the volume of his head. And because a good bit of us is water, that water will weigh pretty much the same as our demonstrator's head. So here are the results. Our demonstrator's head displays 6.5 litres of water, giving a weight of approximately 6.5 kilos. Remember, if you've got a tricky problem to solve, don't lose your head. In a moment, we'll be finding out if one of these can be flown by one of these. And the test department will unveil their new propulsion system for submarines. But first, let's head down to the farm and fondle some udders. It's 4 o'clock in the morning, and with military precision, dairy workers in hundreds of farms across Britain are preparing cows for the first milking of the day. But not on this farm. This is Manor Farm in Oxfordshire. Some of the cows are having a lie-in, others are enjoying their breakfast. And there's not a human in sight. On this farm, it's the cows, not humans, that dictate the milking timetable. And it's all thanks to a robot that allows the cows to be milked whenever they feel like it. Welcome to the first organic dairy farm to be fully robotic. Farmer Neil Rowe is the man in charge. He believes that the key to keeping cows healthy is to make them happy. The entire farm is a shrine to bovine joy, and at the heart of it is a piece of seriously high-tech wizardry.
Basically, we have a robot which interacts with the cows and the cows with it, and we've created what is a voluntary milking system.
Dairy cows can produce on average 30 litres of milk a day, but can only carry 10 litres in their udders, so milking is crucial to keeping them comfortable. When they feel full, they wander over to the milking shed and queue up for the robot. It's designed to be a pleasurable experience to keep the cows coming back. The robot recognises a tag around the cow's neck as it enters and calculates how much milk it will have produced since its last visit. It then mixes up a meal to replace the exact protein and carbohydrate that the cow is about to lose. Rotating brushes sterilise and massage the cow's teats to stimulate the milk flow, and vacuum pumps latch on, guided by a series of invisible lasers. The milk from each quarter of the udder is collected separately, and its exact protein and fat content analysed and logged into a central computer.
The cows are very, very relaxed, and they're much quieter than they would be in a conventional farm where people are telling them what to do.
And it's all to the soothing tones of classical music.
Yeah, normally the cows like to listen to Mozart, and they do seem to like listening to it. And there is some scientific evidence to say that when they're listening to Mozart, the cows transfer the milk from their udder into this jar up to 10% faster.
The robotic system isn't a new idea. It's been around for years, but was originally developed for highly intensive factory farming, where the cows spend their short lives in concrete sheds and are pumped full of drugs to hold off disease. Where Neil is unique is in his approach to the technology. He recognised how the robot's features could be integrated into an organic ethos, where the cows are free to enjoy the finer things in life and rampant disease is a thing of the past. His cows are happy cows. But don't just take our word for it. Dr. Dirk Zaire is one of the world's top bovine experts. And he's a big fan of Neil's setup. Blimey, I'm glad he's not my doctor.
The uterus is a 3. Milk consistency is about a 3. And the digestibility is a 1. So that is very good. The nice thing about Neil's farm is he does not use drugs. We do alter it here with management, because management is the key how to improve this. And Neil's farm is the proof of the pudding, so to speak. His disease incidence is very low, his culling rate is very low, which is a sign on itself of happy, healthy cows. You see here, eating my hand, eating from my hand. Well, you know, this is a happy animal.
Now that Neil's gone robotic, he only has to visit the farm a couple of times each day for routine maintenance. And this frees him up to spend more time with his family.
There are one or two farmers' wives I know that are not too keen on it because it means their husbands are around a lot more.
So Neil gets to do the school run now. And he's also spent time pioneering a system that selects milk with particular qualities.
We can actually ask the robot to select milk from Pacific cows which are producing the highest quality milk for making ice cream. There's no other way of doing that in a conventional system.
This ice cream manufacturer in Oxford is able to specify the exact protein and fat levels it needs for the perfect scoop. And they're so proud of it, they have Neil's cows on the wall.
This is a win-win situation, that the cows can win by having a better lifestyle. The farmer wins because he has more time and a better return on his investment. The consumer wins because they're getting a better product.
And the final word goes to Daisy, which I think means I couldn't agree more. On Experimental, we like to ask the difficult questions, such as, why is it you can't get a good cup of tea on an aeroplane? Well, let's see what happens when our intrepid aviator Etienne and his trusty kettle take to the skies. At takeoff, the kettle is happy to boil away at exactly 100 degrees centigrade. As he rises through the clouds, something very odd begins to happen. As the air pressure drops with altitude, so does the temperature at which the water boils. By the time Etienne gets to 10,000 feet, the water is boiling at a mere 90 degrees Celsius. And as he climbs through 30,000 feet, it's dropped even further, to around 70 degrees Celsius. But what's Etienne got to do with tea on a jetliner? Well, the pressure inside a jet plane is kept at around 8,000 feet, which means that the boiling temperature of water is down to around 90 centigrade. And as every Englishman will tell you, that's simply not hot enough to get the full flavour out of the tea leaves. Coming up, fireworks for your goldfish, courtesy of the test department. But first, an item to freak out anyone with a fear of flying.
Roger, Red Leader, turn 360, break 5.
Ever wonder how the brain of a Top Gun works? How it can make thousands of life or death decisions in a few fractions of a second? Well, that was one of the questions running through the mind of Dr. Jack Gray of the University of Saskatchewan in Canada. But he wasn't interested in sticking wires into the brains of the flyboys. He wanted to study a pilot that could knock any Top Gun for 6. Meet the Locust, the ultimate formation flyer.
I'm pretty fond of them. They're very well-adapted creatures. They are much more complex than we have thought. And as we learn more, we discover how much more complex they actually are.
What Dr. Gray wanted to do was to find out how the locust's primitive nervous system allowed it to fly and navigate in massive swarms without constantly colliding into its mates. So how do you study an insect flying? Meet Loco Simulator 1. First, the locust is fixed to a small length of fishing line and then suspended in a specially designed wind tunnel. As soon as the fan begins to turn, the locust feels the wind over its head and does what locusts do best: fly. The locust moves freely, allowing Dr. Gray to film and study its natural behaviour. And to make the locust do more than simply fly forward, Dr. Gray projected images of possible objects onto a screen inside the wind tunnel. What he found confirmed his suspicions, that the locust's brain was extremely responsive.
It has very fast neurons that can detect approaching objects and allowing the locust to make that very fast decision as to where to go.
So what are these neurons he talks about? Watch what happens when a stimulus enters our flyboy's head.
Oh, I say, look at those eyes. What is it?
The stimulus fires up millions of neurons. And whilst he thinks a lot, making a decision seems to take a long time.
Ready to go.
Now, let's see things from the locust point of view. Not many neurons involved, and a fast, simple decision. Dr. Gray's wind tunnel had proved to him that locust brains can react extremely fast to stimulus, but it wasn't enough. He wanted to dig deeper and actually see what their brains were doing. And for that, he needed a new simulator. Now the locust is mounted on a small pillar, with sensors monitoring its nervous system. Instead of the crude images of LocoSim 1, the locust is now immersed in a virtual reality world and is free to fly wherever it wants to.
When the locust is in the flight simulator, we've actually turned it into a joystick. And so when the locust tries to move, that signal moves the environment in a way the locust might expect it to.
Although it's a long way off, there are some who think we may be able to use the signals coming from the locust nervous system to control not just the simulator, like Dr. Gray has, but tiny aircraft that can fly by themselves. However, it's going to take a long time for a human Top Gun to turf the top guns out of the cockpit. Still to grace your screens, high-tech trainers designed to get this little lad off the couch. But first, someone told the test department that fireworks burn underwater. Rather than just fluttering her eyelashes and trying to look interested, this test department tester decided she'd find out. Naturally, with fireworks being very dangerous, a firework testing 3000 machine needed to be constructed. OK, so it's a fish tank and a plank of wood, but it'll do the trick. And now for the big moment. Will the firework burn underwater? Light the blue touch paper, stand well back, and dip. It works! Our little friend wasn't telling porky pies after all. But why is it working? Well, water does have oxygen in it. That's why we call it H2O. But that's not what's happening here. When a firework burns, it uses oxygen that's locked up in the chemicals within the firework itself. So not only can it burn underwater, but it would also do the same quite happily on the moon.
That may be so, but remember, this experiment is very dangerous and environmentally extremely irresponsible. Just look at that mess.
People have been banging on about obesity for so long that some adults seem to have actually heard the message and are trying their best to tramp off the pounds. Sadly, for every extra step taken by the big people in the gym, there's another section of the population taking another bite. That's right, kids. And that's got experts like Jane Wardle very worried.
Childhood obesity is a tremendous problem in all Western countries at the moment. Overweight in childhood puts you on a track for becoming an overweight adult with all the health costs that that's associated with. And you may also see health costs in childhood of being overweight. For example, raised blood pressure, raised lipids, even, in extreme cases, you'll see insulin resistance and the development of diabetes in childhood.
But try telling that to a kid just 6 kills short of level 9. The house could fall down and they'd never notice. However, Gillian Swan of Brunel University thinks she's got an invention that could do the trick.
Well, I wanted to tackle obesity by finding an alternative to diet. So I looked at what children like doing, which I found to be watching television, and tried to tie this in so that television was the reward.
Gillian is an expert in embedded technology, the art of sticking technology into everyday objects. And the object she stuck her technology into, shoes. The idea is that a sensor in the shoe detects the amount of steps you've taken each day. And when you get home, the shoe tells your TV or game station how far you've walked. Clock up a decent distance and the TV will switch on for a set amount of time. When the time runs out, the screen goes black, and the only way you can switch things on again is to get off the sofa and start exercising. To get a full hour's worth of electronic frills, a kid would have to clock up 6,000 paces, or almost 5 kilometres. But with kids watching around 2.5 hours of TV a day, they'll need to schlep nearly 12 kilometres to gain their full reward.
Well, I think it's a really neat idea. In our experience of working with very overweight and obese children in treatment, is that children can quite enjoy any little gizmo which will measure their steps and can get quite into trying to increase their number of steps. So if the shoes could do the trick, then that would be good news.
So, if the square-eyed shoes catch on, we might just see kids using their trainers for, training. Welcome to Experimental, the science show where girls strut, gherkins smoke, and men fondle underwear. Later on, we'll be walking on eggs, getting exceedingly drunk, and attempting to save a life. But first, the physics of stilettos. Meet Dr. Paul Stevenson, a theoretical physicist at the University of Surrey.
My last paper was on absorbing boundary conditions in dynamical calculations of nuclear collisions and giant resonances.
Pretty impressive stuff, but Dr. Stevenson is also a man who, like many men, has an interest in women. The prettier the better. So when the Institute of Physics wanted a fun equation to amuse the public with the wonders of their subject, it took Dr. Stevenson just a few seconds to come up with this. Believe it or not, these figures are, for women, a scientific guide to the perfect length of their stiletto heels. The most important bit of the equation is the Q number.
Clearly, she's miscalculated her Q number.
So what is a Q number? Well, being physics, a Q number is in fact the product of another, much longer equation. It's based on an index of sociological factors like Y, the number of years you've been wearing stilettos.
I was born in stilettos.
That'll be almost 35 then. L, the cost of the shoes.
£129?
Is that cheap or expensive? T, the time since the style was in fashion.
These are in fashion right now.
I'll take her word for it. And P, the probability the shoe will help you pull.
100%.
Agreed. And finally, there's A, the number of units of alcohol to be consumed whilst wearing them.
This only counts as one.
So that's a total of 9, making a Q factor of 0.08. But what is a Q factor exactly? The maximum length of heels is determined first by physics, predominantly how high you can raise your heel. You can work this out by standing on tiptoes. Then there are the sociological factors, and those are what Dr. Stevenson calls the Q factor. They help determine how close to the physical maximum length you can actually handle. They're things like, how long have you been wearing them? Not long, and you should go for a shorter heel. Then there's the cost. Cost a lot, and you'll probably try harder to wear them, even if they're a bit longer than you can handle. When we asked Dr. Stevenson to do the maths for our model, he calculated that the units of alcohol consumed had reduced the safe heel by a factor of 12, from a maximum of around 15 centimetres to a rather stubby 1.25 centimetres. Which means that the chances of our model getting to the door without an accident are pretty slim. And once again, physics triumphs.
Hello!
In a moment, scientific advice on how to get a good deal with a bra. But first, let the test department lighten your day. The light bulb. Clever, but by no means infallible. But fear not when it pops, because the test department has a replacement you can eat. A pickled gherkin. To turn a gherkin into a light bulb is a highly complex and dangerous procedure, which requires years of expertise.
Yes, and if you haven't got years of expertise, don't do it, because it's electricity we're talking about here, and it can and will kill.
Luckily, we do have years of experience and know how to beef up the terminals of our lamp with some nails, and how to mount the green thing to best effect. So now it's time to hit the switch. Taking the precaution of donning a gas mask. And it works. But why? A gherkin bulb works a bit like an orange street lamp. The electricity heating up sodium crystals in the pickling fluid, which is why it gives off that characteristic orange light. Luckily, the gherkin bulb is unlikely to be lighting much more than the test department lamps in the near future, as it suffers from one rather large drawback.
Hello!
Coming up on Experimental, this chap will swig 200 millilitres of vodka in the name of science. And the test department will walk on eggs. But first, ever thought men were stupid? Strut around the Belgian town of Leuven as a tourist and you'll probably be struck by its beauty. But if you're a Leuven bloke, you'll probably be distracted by another form of beauty. That's right. Leuven blokes are like blokes right around the world. They see a good-looking woman, and that's all they can think about for the next half an hour. And that's why we're here. You see, at Leuven's Katholieke University Department of Economics, there are two blokes who are more obsessed with women than most. Indeed, they're responsible for those bits of underwear you see draped near the door to their department. Meet Bram van den Berg and Dr. Siegfried de Witt. They're interested in how sexy women affect men's cognitive processes. That's science speak for thinking.
It's known from previous research that the use of sexy women has some influence on the cognitive processes of men.
Well, that's not exactly earth-shattering. It's something that the advertising industry has known for years. If you can't sell a car on its looks, put a looker on it, and it'll drive itself off the forecourt. But how to prove this scientifically? Mr. van den Berg and Dr. de Witt hit upon the idea of using that other male obsession, money. They put out a call for heterosexual men to come to their labs, fondle women's underwear, and make some cash. Amazingly, it took a whole cup of tea for a queue to form outside their door. What these strapping lads had signed up to was the opportunity to split €10 between them.
There are two roles in this game. One role is a proposer, and the proposer has to decide on the split of an amount of money. And there is also the responder, and the responder has two options. He can either accept the proposal, or the responder can also reject the offer. And in that case, none of the parties gets anything.
What the two players have to do is to agree to split the money between them. It could be €1 for one and €9 for the other. But if they can't agree on a split, then they'll both lose the money. Logically, the fair split would be €5 each. But if one person is a more aggressive bargainer, he can usually walk away with more than his fair share. The git. So where do the bras come in? Well, amazingly, give a man a bra to fondle before he tries to strike a bargain, and all of a sudden, he'll accept any old deal.
When you have been exposed to a sex cue, you become more likely to accept an unfair offer. So, whereas a fair offer would, for example, be a 50-50 split, a man who was exposed to a bra, for example, he would be more likely to accept an unfair split, like €2 for myself and €8 for the other one.
What's even more interesting is that aggressive men with higher testosterone levels are much more affected by sex cues than their more meek brothers. But it seems it's not just the fact that it's a woman that's turning these butch men into pliable wimps. When the respondents were shown pictures of older women, or women in non-provocative dresses, their bargaining powers were simply not affected.
At the contrary, the high testosterone men were very hard bargainers, so they don't lose their minds and they are not affected. In fact, they want to show how tough they are, apparently. It's only when the woman is dressed in a very sexy way, like you see all the time, like Bram just said on the streets, then this change, this shift occurs.
So it seems that for all our bullish, brutish posturing, when it comes to bargaining, we men can be shot down by the simplest of cues.
It's a quite pessimistic view on man, what we have been able to show. It's like you show them 15 pictures of sexy women. It's not nude women at all. So it's not that they're around. It's not during the bargaining game. It's only after exposures. The preference of these men has changed too. So they become more likely to accept unfair offers. And it's quite bizarre that men are influenced by such a subtle environmental cue.
I don't know. Is it really that bizarre to stop thinking about money and just go ahead and buy this woman a drink? To pay for her dinner, a taxi home, that new dress, the overdue gas bill? In a moment, we prove hopscotch and alcohol don't mix. But first, to the test department, to attempt the impossible. There's a bit of a discussion going on in the test department. One of our testers is determined to prove that a human can stand on eggs without breaking them. His colleagues are not convinced, especially when preliminary trials end in spectacular failure. Undaunted, he's persuaded the lightest and most delicate of his fellow testers to participate in a real-life experiment. He insists that, in theory, the 2 planks will spread the load. But unfortunately, the only thing being spread here is egg. All over the table. In theory, an egg works in exactly the same way as a dome, with all the force being sent downwards through the line of the roof. This makes it one of the strongest shapes in nature, but can it hold a human? What is needed is more load dispersal and a little less movement. Armed with a new refined quadruple width egg plank 3000, in other words, an old piece of board he found round the back, our indomitable tester has dared the dainty-footed one once more to risk life and limb in the pursuit of scientific knowledge. Proof at last that it is possible to stand on eggs. Well, almost. After all, you can't make an omelette without breaking an egg. Why should science be any different? Still to come on Experimental, can we use the appliance of science to save this man from a near certain death? Well, not before we've had a stiff drink, we can't. It's Saturday night in Bristol. That can mean only one thing. Yep, it's time to continue Britain's love affair with alcohol.
Well, I like drinking alcohol because it's a good way to relax at the end of the day. It gets rid of your stresses. It's a place to meet with your mates. You always meet at the pub.
Just people become more chatty when they've had a couple of beers.
Yeah, get rid of your inhibitions. Always just be yourself a bit more, I think.
Yes, a good drink does all these things, but it also makes you aggressive, makes you sick, not to mention what this bunch will feel like tomorrow morning. And that's why Experimental has turned up. We're off to the University of Bristol to meet Professor Nutt, a psychopharmacologist at Bristol University who wants to replace alcohol with less harmful drugs.
I reckon probably about one person a day in the UK, probably 300 to 400 a year, die of alcohol poisoning. And then it's many thousands die of or get brain damage as a consequence of having road traffic accidents when they're drunk. A large number of people get raped, probably the order of 3 or 4 a day as a consequence of being drunk. And then the damage through fights and violence and knifings, it's probably the order of 5 to 10 a day. So there's a huge social cost of being drunk. So alcohol is a drug which could not be licensed today. If it was invented today, it would be banned without any doubt.
There's some evidence that alcohol actually originated in Neolithic times, when sore heads were a fact of life. Given the fact that the modern freezer was a few thousand years away, booze was a pretty good way of preserving some of the goodness in fruit and berries way beyond their season. And let's face it, with life expectancies of less than 30 years, cirrhosis of the liver was not something ancient man was worried about. Nowadays, things are different. We can see the damage it does every day, which is why Professor Nutt wants to find an alternative.
And I thought, well, we could potentially find drugs which could mimic the effects of alcohol, which would inevitably be safer than alcohol because they're drugs and not a toxin like alcohol. They wouldn't cause the same damage to the peripheral organs.
That's right. If David Nutt gets his way, then it's goodbye to the pint and the cocktail, and hello to the little pill. To simulate the effects of alcohol, any drug would have to work by boosting the effects of the brain's neurotransmitters. Initially, alcohol affects the higher thinking centres of the brain, which is why we lose our social inhibitions and begin to think we're brilliant. Sadly, alcohol soon starts inhibiting our ability to think clearly, before going on to inhibit the workings of other areas of the brain, affecting our balance and muscle coordination.
Talking about benzodiazepine-like drugs, because we know that those have many of the effects of alcohol. And because it's a receptor, and we have drugs which bind to the receptor and increase the effects of the natural transmitter GABA in the brain, and they do mimic many of the effects of alcohol, we could probably get to a situation where you could have an intoxicant that was safe and also reversible.
So what we're talking about here is the opportunity to get drunk safely, then sober up in a matter of moments. This sounds too good to be true, so we recruited 2 drinkers to find out. Dem here is going to hit the vodka, a less than healthy 200 ml of the stuff, mixed with orange juice. While Simon gets a cocktail of a rather different sort, provided by Professor Nutt.
Cheers.
If Professor Nutt's got his mix right, the effects of his chewy little pills will be much the same as the real tasty stuff in the glass. To find out, Experimental has set up a number of simple dexterity tasks. Easy sober, but kinda hard to do once the booze has kicked in. So, let's see if the alcohol has entered the bloodstream. 1.65, that's twice the UK legal limit for driving, which is why we'll play hopscotch. So, we can say that 200 ml of vodka is detrimental to the game. But what about 2 little pills? Not too bad. Oh, spoke too soon. Now how about darts? That's the drinking man's game. Whoa, and double nought scored there. And finally, the policeman's old favourite, walking down the white line. First, Dem the boozer. And now, Simon the pill popper. Steady as a drunk. But how does he feel?
At the moment I'm feeling some of the more physical effects as if I was drunk. I'm feeling a bit lightheaded and legs not quite as under control as usual, but not really getting so much of the psychological effects, like getting chatty or feeling more relaxed.
And that's the problem for Professor Nutt's chewy little alcohol substitute. Most people drink for the chatty bit, not for the falling over bit.
Now, it's not identical, and there are some aspects of alcohol, particularly the initial energizing effects. When people begin to get drunk, they often become a bit activated, and that isn't mimicked by that benzodiazepine. Until we can mimic alcohol completely, we won't know whether this is a viable alternative. I do accept that.
But there is one massive advantage to Professor Nutt's pills. They have an antidote. Dem's blood alcohol level will not return to normal for about 8 hours. But Simon here will be as sober as a judge within seconds. To prove it, let's see what happens when he plays darts once more.
Aim for 3 treble 20s for me, please.
180! Almost. Finally, it's experimental to the rescue. Roofing tiles, fishing line, and the lid of a styrofoam beer cooler. What do these 3 things have in common? Well, they might just save a life, because stick them all together and you've got the water kite. It's the rather unlikely invention of Trevor Miller, keen angler and water sports enthusiast, who wasn't having much luck one day trying to catch a fish because his bobber wouldn't stay put.
The moment of inspiration for the water kite came when I was fishing in a river, casting my line out and watching the fishing bobber float downstream. I came up with an idea to keep the fishing bobber out in the current by fixing sort of like an upside-down sail to the bottom of the fishing bobber.
Once he had his bobber working, Trevor started to think bigger.
I basically went into my father's barn and took a look at what I had around, a styrofoam cooler lid, a roofing shingle, and some fishing twine, realizing that I've come up with an idea that might someday save people's lives.
The usual way to rescue a victim from a raging river is to try and throw him a rope. But to do that, you have to time your throw just right to land the rope in front of the victim as he floats past. The water kite overcomes this difficulty by taking timing out of the equation. Once the water kite is in position, it can be held there until the victim reaches it.
The water kite is able to float upstream by working off the principle of lift in much the same way that a kite flies against the wind.
Kites fly by exploiting Newton's third law.
For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. At least, that's roughly it.
Hold a kite flat and there's no lift. But tilt it and the air hits the underside of the kite.
Aye, that's the action bit.
And it goes up.
Oh, that's the reaction bit.
This angle of attack, as it's called, is the key element in the way aeroplanes fly. Their wings, angled to the oncoming air, generate a lift. Up to a point, increasing the angle of attack increases the lift.
Aye, but only up to a point.
What Trevor's water kite does is use the same principles. Now it's the water pushing on the angled fin that makes the water kite rise upstream, just like a real kite would rise into the air. By pulling the 2 ropes attached to the kite, you can change its angle of attack. And you can make the water kite float, as if flying upstream, maintaining its position until the hapless victim floats by. It's only a prototype, but in the future, Trevor hopes that his water kite will be standard issue in search and rescue teams, and even the military. Experimental was so impressed by what Trevor thought to do with his water cooler, string and roofing shingle that we asked some other inventors what they'd come up with, but the results were not quite so promising.
If you know what you're doing, you could kill someone with these things.
Materials to build a house?
A mice yacht device.
It's my treehouse when I was a little kid.
The hideous jewelry my ex-boyfriend used to buy for me. And that's why he's my ex-boyfriend.